Welcome back. Well, as more folks get vaccinated, health experts say people are getting back on the dating scene, which could come with some consequences if you aren't safe. According to the CDC, more than 2.5 million sexually transmitted infections were reported in 2019. I spoke with OBGYN Dr. Tamika Cross from Houston about why we could be faced with another spike post-pandemic. Dr. Tamika Cross, thank you so much for joining us here on BNC to talk about this, and welcome to BNC.
Thank you for having me. Very excited.
We are glad to have you with us. We know this has been a very much talked about story during the pandemic. So we know during the pandemic there was a drop in reported sexually transmitted diseases and infections, but now that outside is open, as people have been putting it, more folks are getting together, and we'll start to see a post-pandemic rise in those reports. Why is that?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. So the initial decline that was reported was really due to a few things. I mean, number one, in the beginning, of course, people weren't going outside of their households as much, but also people weren't getting tested as much because they didn't have access to the same healthcare resources that they had before when the clinics were closing down for any non-emergent cases or clinical appointments. So I do think that that initial decline potentially could have been a little false. And so now, I think by the end of 2020, they started to see the numbers already going back to 2019 numbers. And then now it's continued to rise. And then, as you stated, as people are getting out more and people are, making up for lost time and, connecting with people they haven't connected with in over a year, we're definitely seeing an increase in sexual activity, increase in pregnancy, and unfortunately, an increase in sexually transmitted infections.
And so some folks are calling it kind of the summer of love, if you will. But I mean, these could potentially have long-term impacts on your life. Talk about that.
Absolutely. So I'm always educating my patients, letting them know that a sexually transmitted infection needs to be diagnosed and treated as soon as possible because specifically for women, the fact that you have an infection that's festering for a long period of time and potentially damaging your uterus, your uterine lining, as well as your fallopian tubes, which could impact your fertility in the future, as well as if the infection were to become more severe, and sometimes you see sepsis, or when it is essentially a systemic infection in your entire body. So yes, it's very important to be treated early on in the disease process.
And what are you seeing the most of right now? Because there are certain ones that tend to show up more than others.
Yeah, I think it kind of depends geographically where you're at.
Doc, since people are getting vaccinated, are they more comfortable kind of getting closer, if you will?
Absolutely. I'm here in Texas, and people are very comfortable here. And so definitely we're seeing people going out more, going to public, restaurants and events and things like that. People aren't wearing masks as much. It's not required in every establishment anymore. So yeah, people are definitely getting more comfortable going back to, dating and things like that. So for sure.
And what about the apps? I mean, a number of people have kind of gone into this wave of dating online. It's kind of like the new way to date at this point. Does that in turn have any type of impact on people kind of getting closer together?
I think yes, because I think definitely there wasn't an increase during the pandemic of online dating because, people couldn't do the traditional dating anymore. And it's just been an increase in general. And so I think now that people are getting out more, they are able to meet up with all the different people that they met online. And so it's basically giving them access to more potential dates, more candidates than they probably would have had in a traditional face-to-face meeting environment.
Mm-hmm. And so, of course, Dr. Cross, STDs numbers have been increasing for years. This isn't something new to any of us. But, of course, also, we've all been told before what to do. But sometimes people just need a little bit of a reminder. So what's the best way that folks can actually protect themselves?
Absolutely. So practicing safe sex entails a few different things. So number one, making sure that, before you're engaging in sexual activity, that it is with somebody that you trust. And so that's first and foremost. And then when you are engaging in sexual activity, definitely to protect yourself using some type of barrier method, whether it be a condom, a dental dam, something to protect against sexually transmitted infections. And a lot of times, we look at those different barriers as contraceptives, and although they can be moderately effective contraceptive options, it's really for an STI prevention standpoint. So it's still important to use it even if you have good birth control or contraception on board.
So what happens, Dr. Cross, if these things go untreated, if you don't do anything about it and you kind of just walk around without actually going to see the doctor about having any STI or any STD?
Yeah, so it definitely can continue to worsen. The infection can worsen, it can spread, as well as you're continuing to transmit it to any potential partners that you have. It definitely can affect your fertility from a female standpoint as well as a male standpoint. And then also, like I said, if it worsens, it can cause a severe infection spread throughout your body that could actually leave you hospitalized potentially.
Yeah, so I mean, at this point, people have to know this is very serious. I know oftentimes people talk about like, okay, folks are just getting together, what have you, but they have to know that this is very serious because it can cause some very, very serious harm to your body. Well, Dr. Cross, we appreciate your time today. Anything else that you wanted to say to folks just as they're starting to get back out there, just make sure they need to be safe?
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to encourage everyone to definitely continue to protect yourself and make sure that you have condoms on deck at all times before engaging in sexual activity. And then also just, know your partner. And just because, you have been trapped in the house for a while and you're getting back out there, don't let this be an opportunity for you to catch something that is irreversible.
That is very, very good advice there. Dr. Cross, we appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course.